Hello everyone and welcome to our sessions on Japanese candlesticks. My name is Merlin Rothfeld, excited to be with you today. One of my favorite topics in trading is actually looking at candlesticks. And when we look at those on a price chart, it's rather simple. We see all these colored little bars out there, but what do they actually tell us? Well, I'm going to start off by going back through history and looking at how these came to be, why they're so important, and why they are so much more than just reading price. It's really a behavioral analysis tool, and we can start to understand how buyers and sellers are thinking and the emotions behind that. That gives us a competitive advantage. Now, we're streaming live out there today, so we'll be watching your chat as it comes through here today. So please feel free to keep on typing in your chat and questions as we go, and I'll try to get to all those. Now, as a quick little precursor here, of course, we've got a disclaimer there. I'm going to do like one of those car sales guys and read through it very, very quickly. No, I'm not. I'll just let you guys read it at your own leisure. So let's go and start off with a basic example. Something we all remember from our elementary school or camp days, a tug-of-war battle. Well, when we look at Japanese candlesticks, I want you guys to understand that it's basically a tug-of-war battle. Every candle starts out at an even point. There's no winner, there's no loser. But as that battle progresses, and you look here, we've got two guys on the left-hand side, we've got two lovely ladies on the right-hand side, we can start to base our assumptions about what's going to happen. And, and lo and behold, we go here and we get back to that one. There you go. You see all of a sudden the guys are just crushing it, right? They're pulling, they're getting the girls almost all the way past that line, so they're just about to win. But the battle's not over yet. And for whatever reason, whatever circumstance, those girls just dig deep. They plant those heels, and all of a sudden they start pulling and pulling and pulling, and they start to win this battle. And at the end of it all, when the bell rings, when the whistle blows, the girls have won this battle. So regardless of what your preconceived notions were going into this battle, there was a period of time where the men were winning, there was a period of time where the women won, but ultimately at the end of all of this, the ladies won. And that tells us a little bit about the psychology going into that situation. So that's kind of how we're going to focus on this. I want you to think of it as a battle, a war between participants. Now, in the real world, it's not about you and me or any other specific trader. It's all of us combined. So how did it all start? Well, we can go way back to the early days here. This is what's called the Dojima rice market. And really in 1710 is when they went to a futures market, because it used to be kind of a actual hand-on rice type of market until 1710. And then it went to a futures type of exchange. And this is a classic picture we found of the Dojima rice market. Now, one of the traders that emerged from that, and it really is kind of known as the father of Japanese candlesticks, is a gentleman by the name of Hama Manahisa. Again, I put on there, the father of Japanese candlesticks. I'm pretty sure he's actually an honorary samurai, by the way, just for those who want to know. Because he was so good at Japanese candlesticks and trading, they made him an honorary samurai. And I don't know about you, but I'm thinking an honorary samurai should be able to swing a sword pretty good. But well, maybe he could. 1724 to 1803 was his lifespan there. And I want to bring up a quote here that some of you might attribute to another famous investor out there. There's one that people look at Warren Buffett and say, that's Warren Buffett's phrase. No. It's Hama Manahisa. And he says, when all are bearish, there is cause for price to rise. When everyone is bullish, there is cause for price to fall. And this goes back to kind of the Warren Buffett one where he says, when there's blood in the streets, that's when you want to be buying. And when everyone's getting really excited, that's when you want to get out. Pretty much says the same thing, right? But just a couple hundred years earlier. So let's walk through the very basics. Now, some of you might be familiar with Japanese candlesticks. Some of you might be brand new to this. It's okay. We'll start off with the very basics. Then I'm going to show you some more common patterns. And then I'll show you actually on real charts what these formations look like. So we'll start off with this basic illustration here, which really shows us a bar chart. This is not a candlestick chart quite yet. Now, every bar of information really gives us 5 pieces of information. And of course, you're looking at this going, I only see 4 words on each one. Well, the left hash mark there represents where it opened. You can see the low, you can see the high, and you can see the right hash mark is where it closed at. So those are your 4 pieces, but there's one more, which would be the range, and that's simply the distance between the high and the low. Those 5 components are what make up all bars and candles, and they give us a good insight as to what's going on with price and psychology. Now, if it opened lower, if it closed higher than it opened, then you're going to see an example of what we have on the left here, which is a bullish candle, which would be a white real body. And then if it closed lower than it opened, you'd have a black real body. Now, the way that Japanese candlesticks were traditionally done were in black and white. Nowadays, it's changed to red and green, which is somewhat ironic because trading is pretty much a male-dominated world. It is definitely changing, and happy to see that, but still predominantly men are traders out there, and it's red and green, which I believe something like 19% of men are colorblind to red and green. Could we have picked different colors? All right, the real body is the piece that was just colored in here, and that basically takes the difference between where it opened and where it closed, and based off what those numbers are, it will either make it white or black or red or green. Now, the white candle obviously is going to be green for up, and your black candle would be red, meaning it closed lower than where it opened. Those are the very, very basics of candles. So we can start by looking at this chart here. Doesn't matter what security this is or what time frame it is, but you guys can see we've got a lot of black and white candles there. And very clearly, when we get a nice streak of black candles out there, it gives us that kind of negative connotation. We feel like there's a downside move there. You see some where there's a lot of white candles in a row, and that leads us to nice bullish moves. Well, most platforms now will look like this, with mostly red and green candles. Now, of course, we can change these to fit our color scheme at home. I like to use black and white candles simply because it's easier for me to see because I'm part of that 19% who's colorblind. Now let's break up the individual candles, right? You got a basic understanding. They represent buyers out there, they represent sellers, and we get 5 pieces of information. Here is where we want to start to focus on the psychology of candlesticks. So here we've got 2 candles, one showing buying pressure, one showing selling pressure. And you're wondering, well, why does that one on the left show buying pressure? Well, if you'll notice, the candle on the left is a white candle, meaning that it opened at the bottom of that white box and closed at the dead high. So that's kind of bullish, right? But more important is what happened during that range. So take a peek at this. During this time frame, let's say this candle represents 1 day of trading. You can see the price was aggressively selling off. At one point, this was a giant black or red candle because it would sold all the way down to those lows. But going back to our tug-of-war analogy, this is just like what we saw at the opening of this presentation. The buyers came back in, and for whatever reason, you could explain it till you're blue in the face, doesn't matter. The buyers came back and pushed this up all the way to the high of the day. Very positive. So if we go back to a simple analogy of you and your significant other are in an argument, and you're fighting about something, you can pick whatever topic it is. What's the most important word to have in that argument? It's the last word, and if you're like me, it's usually I'm sorry or, have some flowers. But really, it's the last word in this Japanese candlestick is, in this case, was buyers pushing it up. They're the power, and that's the momentum at that point in time. On the right side of your screen, you see the inverse of that, where at one point we had a string of buyers pushing this thing up, right? It was a nice green candle. It was a white candle, depending on which colors you use. I'll use red and green from here on out. But it was a nice green candle, and who knows why, but the sellers came back in and not only sold it all the way back down to where it opened, but even lower and closed it at the dead low. This is a sign of a very, very bearish pressure out there, and depending on where these candles happen, where they show up on a price chart, can give us some high probability trading factors. So let's look at these 6 candlesticks out here. Normally what I would do is I would ask you guys